Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. 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 Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. 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 Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. 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 Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Shri Radhe
Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe.
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Gaura Pimanandi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajika Saja Stotra Satya Sri Simad His Divine Grace Srila Charanaravind Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Iskadi Biti Founder Charya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Samavata Bhakti Vrinda ki Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai Shri Sri Gonitai ki Jai Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki Jai Nitai Gaura Pimanandi Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakayam Chakshurindritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhisam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Mukam karoti vachanam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam I would like to request devotees who have cell phones to completely turn them off. I repeat, if anybody has cell phone, turn it off completely. If I hear a cell phone, it has to come on my table. And you might or might not get it back. It's called pollution, noise pollution. During Bhagavatam class, during satsanga, cell phones are noise pollution, isn't it? They're disturbance. So I'd like to thank those who have come for our short program this evening. We're a little bit on the late side, and we'll keep it somewhat on the short side as well. Yesterday morning, we started reading one section of the Bhagavatam, which is actually very important. It is covering the instructions given by one very great Vaishnava king by the name of King Rishabhadev. Out of the 10, Bhagavatam actually studies 10 principles or 10 topics, beginning with creation, primary creation, secondary creation, and among the 10 topics, I guess you could call them tattvas, 10 tattvas. We'll be covering some of that in a course we'll be giving called Dharma Shastri, Tattva, the science of Tattva. Very important actually. So out of these 10 topics, one of them has to do with the different manus, the different kings who have ruled not only this planet but many other planets. We, of course, only identify and know this planet. And previously, there used to be not only many kings, but there used to be like one emperor for the whole universe, for the whole planet Earth. And even beyond the planet, there used to be personalities. They're referred to as manus. Manus are one of 6 types of incarnations, actually, avatar. And they would rule for hundreds and thousands of years. And naturally, by their good example, by their good instructions, they would bring so much of benefit, they would give so much benefit to society. And their primary objective and goal was to actually help the prajas, the citizens or their dependents, how to become self-realized, how to become freed from the material entanglement that comes when we take birth in this material world. Taking birth in the material world is not so complicated. Getting out of the material world, or stopping the process of birth and death, is actually the challenge. And we should all understand that actually that is our biggest challenge. And that is our main goal, actually, in life. The goal is not simply to continue in this seemingly unending cycle called samsara, the cycle of birth and death. An intelligent person, one who comes in contact with this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, has the necessary tool, the necessary knowledge to actually bring an end to this very troublesome cycle of birth and death. Kindly adjust it so then I can adjust also. Every time you change it, I have to change. It was not so bad a few minutes ago. Anyways. One of the most important instructions given by King Rishabhadev is in this particular chapter we started to read. And I'm sure many of you have heard it before. In any event, it's good to hear again. And it will address, or it will be directed, it is directed to probably everyone who's sitting here, because it has to do with those who have dependents. What are the special duties and responsibilities of those who are dependents? And this was one of the important instructions given by King Rishabhadev. This will not be a regular Bhagavatam class because we don't have that much time, and also we'll keep that for tomorrow morning. I will read just once the verse and then go directly to the purport. For reference purposes, this is the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also the 5th chapter, text number 18. You may want to come back and read this verse later on. Gurur na sasyat swajano na sasyat Pita na sasyat janani na sasyat Daivam na tatsyan na patischa sasyan Namo chayedya samupeta mrityum Gurur na sasyat swajano na sasyat Pita na sasyat janani na sasyat Daivam na tatsyan na patischa sasyan Namo chayedya samupetam mrityum Gurur na sasyat swajano na sasyat Pita na sasyat janani na sasyat Daivam na tatsyan na patischa sasyan Namo chayedya samupeta mrityum. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: one who cannot deliver his dependence from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Kindly repeat after me. One who cannot deliver his dependence from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Purport: there are many spiritual masters But Rishabhadev advises that one should not become a spiritual master if he is unable to save his disciple from the path of birth and death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save himself from the path of repeated birth and death. Chaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjuna. One cannot stop birth and death. One can stop. One can stop birth and death only by returning home back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord in truth? Janma karma samedibhyam evam yoveti tatvataha. We have many instances in history illustrating Rishabhadev's instructions. Shukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali Maharaj from the path of repeated birth and death. Shukracharya was not a pure devotee. He was more or less inclined to fruitive activity, and he objected when Bali Maharaj promised to give everything to Lord Vishnu. Actually, one is supposed to give everything to the Lord because everything belongs to the Lord. Consequently, the Supreme Lord advises in Bhagavad-Gītā 9:27, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurusva madarpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. This is bhakti. Unless one is devoted, he cannot give everything to the Supreme Lord. Unless one can do so, he cannot become a spiritual master, husband, father, or mother. Similarly, the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their relatives just to satisfy Krishna. This is an example of a wife rejecting a husband who cannot deliver her from the impending dangers of birth and death. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father, and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother, Janani Nasasyat. The word Daivam indicates a demigod, or one who accepts worship from a dependent. Ordinarily, the spiritual master husband, father, mother, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. But here, Rishabhadev forbids this. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release the dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple, or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. Very important instructions given here, both by Lord Rishabhadev and elaborated upon by Srila Prabhupada. Human form of life, especially, means a life of responsibility. First and foremost, we must become responsible to ourselves. We must save ourselves. We must become situated in proper knowledge. We must become freed from the modes of material nature. We must become, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, pure devotees. Pure devotee means someone who is not under the dictates of the modes of material nature. Pure devotee, sometimes we fantasize that, pure devotee is someone who like floats in the air practically, or someone who's completely out of this world. Srila Prabhupada speaks, of course, about pure devotee many times, and so does Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Rupa Goswami explains that one who has taken up the process of bhakti, devotional service, and who is every day putting into practice the principles of sadhana bhakti, such a person is actually considered liberated. May not be fully purified, but is considered liberated. And one who is able to strictly follow the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, means the 4 rules and regulations that Srila Prabhupada has introduced when he established this International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Actually, Srila Prabhupada basically introduced what we call the 4 pillars of Dharma. Important for us to know, to understand these 4 rules and regulations are directly connected with the 4 pillars of Dharma. We cannot properly be considered as strict followers of Dharma, and we cannot expect the results of someone who is meant to follow the principles of Dharma if we don't apply these 4 principles. And they are based on the 4 qualities given by Srila Narada Muni in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, these 4 principles, or these 4 qualities, known as Satyam, Daya, Tapasocham, they are the first 4 of 30 qualities that qualify someone to actually become a human being. One becomes a human being by developing these 4 qualities. One who follows these 4 qualities becomes situated in the mode of goodness. Being situated in the mode of goodness is equivalent to attaining, we could say, a certain level of purity. One can be referred to as pure devotee if one is actually following these 4 rules and regulations and seriously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So in the purport here, Prabhupada explains that actually one cannot expect to go back home, back to Godhead, unless one becomes a pure devotee. And simultaneously one cannot expect to help or assist one's dependents, isn't it? If one is not situated on that level. The simple example given by Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, if our hands are tied in the back like this, how we can untie someone else, how we can deliver some other person. We first have to become freed. Our hands have to become freed. So in this way, that should actually be our primary goal and objective, working towards ourselves becoming liberated, maintaining as high level as possible of Krishna consciousness, means actually becoming situated in the mode of goodness. Then we can expect to help and assist, and because actually this is also mentioned here, there are many kinds of spiritual masters. There are many kinds of leaders in society. Leader means anyone who has dependents. A teacher at school who is teaching students, he's a kind of leader. He's a spiritual master. In Indonesia, for example, because the culture of the people in Indonesia is very closely connected to the Vedic culture, they call the teacher Guru. That's the name of it. So they have thousands of gurus in Indonesia. Every single, that's the name of the teacher. guru. So in this way, actually, there are many spiritual masters, and included in the list, of course, are parents, mothers, and fathers as well. And anyone in society, right up to the, let's say, king in a country. In our Shastra, it mentions how when dependents act in a wrong way, then the person responsible must take a certain percentage of the reaction. Very intricate. There are laws, many of which we are not knowing or less familiar with, and due to not knowing these laws, we commit so many mistakes, we commit so many offenses, and in this way we remain bound up in the material world, and we continue in this repeated cycle of birth and death. So spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, means how to deepen our understanding of so many things, in particular how valuable this human form of life is, and those who are self-realized souls like our acharyas, they are there to actually guide us in different ways how to utilize this human form of life, how to engage whatever it is that we may have in the service of Krishna. The more we learn the art and the science of dovetailing everything in Krishna's service, then our level of purification will increase. We will be more effective leaders or spiritual masters in our respective roles within society. In modern day present situation all over the world, actually there is a very great vacuum of qualified leaders. We are very much lacking qualified leaders in all the countries of the world at all different levels, and Srila Prabhupada very much wanted to create various kinds of leaders, qualified fathers, qualified mothers, qualified teachers, qualified gurus, qualified presidents of countries. So in this way we have very great responsibility to cultivate this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, especially by, I would say, more thoroughly studying these Vedic literatures. That is generally the main activity traditionally of Brahmanas. Brahmanas would become well versed in the Shastra, and they would present the conclusions of such Shastra to the general population, and they would advise especially personalities like Lord Rishabhadev. One qualification of such exalted personalities is that they would take advice, isn't it, from qualified brahmanas or from qualified spiritual masters. Srila Prabhupada had great hopes and expectations for this movement, Krishna consciousness movement, and he would explain how whenever children are born from Krishna conscious parents, such children are tremendously fortunate, greatly fortunate, because from there, actually Prabhupada gave himself as example. In a few places he explained how due to the mercy of Krishna I was born in a Vaishnava family, Prabhupada explains. And explaining how anyone who has such great fortune, then one gets an opportunity to hear about Krishna consciousness and become Krishna conscious himself. And in the case of Srila Prabhupada, of course, not only he as an individual became Krishna conscious, but he has enabled and facilitated hundreds and thousands of other people to become Krishna conscious. That was the mood and mentality of Srila Prabhupada in going to the Western countries. That my dear Lord kindly utilize me as you desire. This is the proper mentality actually of a devotee, understanding our various limitations, understanding how insignificant actually we are, but that if we put ourselves in the hands of the Lord, if we try to follow the Lord's good instructions, then the Lord can utilize. Krishna actually is in many ways utilizing different surrendered souls in performing many wonderful activities all over the world. The whole Bhagavatam is full of such examples. So I was mentioning earlier how we will not be taking too long this evening. Devotees should take more and more seriously the process of devotional service. One of the important ways is to hear regularly, especially from the Bhagavatam. We should never underestimate the importance of hearing from the Bhagavatam. We should always keep in mind how the author of the Vedic literatures, Srila Vyasadeva, after compiling all of the Vedic literatures, he summarized everything in the pages of the Bhagavatam to make it easier for us to actually directly come to the essence of the Vedic knowledge or the Vedic literatures. As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad-Gītā, Vedaista sarvair aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. That I am the goal and the objective of all the Vedic literatures. So we are tremendously fortunate in that Srila Vyasadeva, as an incarnation of the Lord, is giving us in all of the different cantos, in all the 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam, the essence, always bringing us to the process of bhakti, devotional service. Here we are being reminded by King Rishabhadev, by taking to the process of bhakti, devotional service. That is how we become gradually purified, and by liberating ourselves, then we become qualified. Then we are able to help others also become liberated. And even before fully leaving this material world, this is how wonderful the process of devotional service is. Even here in the material world, we get a little glimpse. We can get a small glimpse. Actually, not only a small glimpse. If we're very serious, we can get a full picture, actually, of what it will be like when we return to the spiritual world, isn't it? Because activities of bhakti, when they are performed very sincerely, when they are performed with love and devotion, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad-Gītā, fully open the doors actually to the spiritual world. These activities of bhakti are actually not of the material world. And that's why association of devotees is something very unique, very special, and therefore as devotees we always need to be cautious in how we deal with one another. The other day somebody was asking how not to be familiar amongst ourselves, because in the material world most people who become friends or who develop different kind of friendship, very often they become too familiar, and this leads to all kinds of difficulties in different ways. We end up not properly, I would say, giving respect to others. So as Vaishnavas, as devotees, we should guard ourselves against that. We should always be very cautious in how we deal with one another. We should be very respectful. We should see the presence of the Lord actually in the heart of every devotee, not only every devotee, but actually every living entity. Krishna as Super Soul is situated in everyone's heart, isn't it? And one develops, or one should develop, this kind of mentality. Pandita Samadarshinaha. A learned person is one who sees the presence of the Lord and is not affected or distracted by the externals. So we should in this way focus on the essence. Srila Prabhupada has given us all this very wonderful process of bhakti, devotional service. There are literally unlimited activities that we could be doing. We should pray to Krishna to help us find activities that will be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, that will be pleasing to Krishna, that will help this mission to actually become more and more established. Srila Prabhupada explained on many occasions how, and his spiritual master as well gave the same message, the great need in modern day society is actually this basic, simple understanding of Krishna consciousness. We have now reached a level which in many ways is unprecedented, never before seen, never before in history. A very complex, complicated material life, the opposite of what Vedic culture actually teaches us. Life is meant to be actually simple. Life is meant to be pleasant. Life is meant to be without anxiety. Life is meant to be the opposite of what it is in modern day society, basically, where everyone is generally living in super high, tension because of the whole lifestyle that has developed. Most people don't even have time to think. One actually should find some time to think, as odd as it may seem, because most of the time conditions are not helping, or situations are not conducive to think properly. To think properly might seem like a very basic activity, but one needs to have a peaceful mind, isn't it? And most people today don't have a peaceful mind because of so many different pressures. So spiritual life actually is meant to lead us to develop more and more peaceful mind. Peaceful mind comes more easily also when we live in a peaceful atmosphere. And most people don't live in peaceful atmosphere nowadays, rather the opposite. So, of course, as devotees, we should, at least in our home, wherever we live, try to create a favorable atmosphere so that, we stop and think, we stop and hear, and then we can, have a bit of more of a clear mind, clear consciousness, peaceful mind. And in a peaceful mind, we can understand and see things more easily. We can make proper decisions in life, and we can more easily, more nicely, more quickly as well advance in Krishna consciousness, and we can help others as well. One of the foremost qualities, isn't it? One of the foremost qualities of a Vaishnava is that he is compassionate upon other living entities. He understands that this material world is not an easy place, and he knows why people are suffering, you see. Vaishnava means someone who clearly understands that everyone's suffering in the material world is due to a lack of Krishna consciousness. And if someone is fortunate to develop Krishna consciousness, to practice Krishna consciousness, which begins with the chanting of the holy name, and this was conveyed, of course, by Prahlad Maharaj. Very nice prayer in the Bhagavatam, whereby Prahlad Maharaj explains that for myself, because I have been taught by Narada Muni to chant the holy name, I have absolutely no anxiety. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm peaceful. But actually, I'm very much in anxiety for all those fools who, don't accept Krishna, or all those unfortunate living entities who have not yet had the opportunity to learn about the chanting of the holy name. So anyone who has had this opportunity to come in contact with the holy name, even if he has nothing else in the world, he should be blissful. You know, yeah, because ultimately we don't need anything else but the holy name. If we are fully actually understanding how dependent we should be in Krishna, he puts us in different situations to teach us how to become more dependent. Sometimes practically forces us to be, because we are somewhat reluctant. As a matter of fact, we are very reluctant to totally depend on anybody, including Krishna. You know, because that is our ongoing, very long ongoing disease. We falsely think and falsely endeavor to become independent. We are not at all independent. And this is probably one of the great lessons that we need to learn in life. And as devotees, that's one of the basic teachings as well. A devotee is someone who understands his full and total, constant dependence on Krishna. And this is a mentality we should develop. And in this way, we put ourselves at the mercy of the Lord, and we learn to be satisfied with whatever Krishna sends our way, and simply having received the holy name, we should actually one day come to that platform that if it's only the holy name, if it's only the holy name that I have, I'm happy. You know. So personalities, of course, like Haridas Thakur, they're rare in this world, but Haridas Thakur was on that platform, and that is why he could chant the holy name, you know, like 22 hours a day. We cannot falsely imitate personalities like Haridas Thakur, but we should know that this is actually where, or at that level that we should be aiming to one day attain. Maybe we'll take a few minutes if there are any questions, because it's already, according to my clock, getting on the late side here. We started a little bit late also. And once again, I want to thank the devotees for taking the trouble to fight through the Hyderabad and Secunderabad traffic to come here. Not only you have to come here, but now you have to go back. So it's like half of the, we've only come half through the battle and the struggle of coming and attending this small program of Sadhu Sangha. So I'm very thankful that you have come here, because actually we cannot have Sadhu Sangha without sadhus. So, so without all of you who are sadhus, because you're all chanting the holy name, in this way we have, by Krishna's mercy, some opportunity for Sadhu Sangha this evening. Any questions, doubts, objections, or comments? That won't require another 1 hour of explanation. I saw two hands come up, and the first one I saw was this side. I'll come to you in a second. Anyways, ladies first.
I just wanted to know that we try our best. See, as a mother, and we have definitely dependence, our children. That is the first question, where we try our best to bring them to Krishna consciousness. So maybe they make baby steps, but we ourselves are not pure. Because you just said that one has to become a pure devotee, and then only he'll be able to liberate his dependence. So it's a huge challenge.
Isn't it? Huh?
So what do we do?
So the question or the comment is that we have just heard that in order to deliver our dependence, we have to become pure devotees. So we are endeavoring as parents to assist and to help our children, but we're not yet pure devotees. So what to do? So the idea is that we must continue to endeavor becoming pure devotees, and Krishna, who is situated within our heart, understands our pure desire and sincere effort, and he will help both us and our dependents to advance in Krishna consciousness. Okay. We should always remember as well one of the very important instructions given by Srila Rupa Goswami, again in the Nectar of Devotion. And Nectar of Devotion actually is meant to be part of our, one of the basic books actually in Krishna consciousness, one of the first books that I had read when I came in contact with devotees. So in there, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that we must learn to hope against hope. Very important, because at times situations do seem hopeless, isn't it?
Srila Prabhupada said that we have to feel helpless but not hopeless.
We have to be helpless but not hopeless. Very good, yes. So hope against hope, because modern day society does present very difficult situations, practically seemingly hopeless situations, but in Krishna consciousness we know that nothing is actually, there's no situation that is hopeless in as much as there's no situation that is impossible. There's no such thing as impossible or hopeless. Yes, Prabhuji. You're sitting very far now. You have to speak loud. Or you have to come a little closer.
Actually, my question is, while associated with devotee,
While associating with devotees.
sometimes it is really associating on a spiritual form, but it appears to be social platform and attachment to devotee also. So how do we avoid that?
Okay, while associating with devotees, sometimes it appears to be on the social platform.
Yeah, attachment and all this.
Yeah. Well, that seems okay. You can sit down. I think that's connected with something we were touching upon in terms of being careful to be familiarity. That the English saying is there, familiarity breeds contempt. Yeah, we lose respect. So devotees should not socialize. Devotees should associate. Karmis socialize. Devotees don't socialize. Although we are the international society of Krishna consciousness, but means we don't socialize in the ordinary sense of the term. We associate, just like, for example, we don't eat prasadam. We honor prasadam. Isn't it? There's a big difference. Ordinary people, those who are not devotees, they gobble up food. They eat food. They eat. They don't honor. They don't have a sense of honor. In other words, externally we may be doing what seems to be ordinary. Every day we eat. Everybody eats, right? Every day everybody eats. But a devotee eats first by chanting Sharira, which is a prayer in a different consciousness. And he eats only particular food that is offered. I mean, he takes only prasadam. It's a different, the activity externally is the same, but the consciousness in which it is performed is different. So in the same way, when we associate, when we exchange, when we shouldn't use the word socialize as such, because it has a bit of a negative material kind of connotation. Socialize. Let's go to the pub and socialize. You know, people go out every evening on the weekends to socialize. Well, devotees are not into socializing in that way, because socializing means it ends up in gramya kata and ultimately all kinds of Maya activities. So a devotee associates with other devotees, and one time Srila Prabhupada nicely explained that we actually don't associate with non-devotees. Actually, that is there also, a satsanga tyaga, a Vaishnavacharya. It's not that we may not or should not speak to non-devotees, but Prabhupada was explaining how a devotee does not take the association of a non-devotee. Rather, he tries to give him devotional association. In other words, a materialistic person is someone who doesn't know about, the spiritual value or spiritual dimension of life, and therefore his thoughts, his words, his activities, his everything is Maya, practically. So we should not imbibe or take his Maya. We should rather, whatever Krishna consciousness we have, whatever understanding we have about Krishna, whatever spiritual, devotional activities that we may perform, whatever prasadam we may honor, we try to share that. We try to give these elements, these Krishna conscious elements. So in this way we don't socialize actually, we rather associate and try to give Krishna conscious association. So when we are interacting with non-devotees, we should be cautious, we should be on our guard, because if we're not, then we will become contaminated. And when we associate with with devotees, because that was your question, we also have to be on our guard. And we should always be thinking that, this is a devotee. And I should also not forget, I'm also supposed to be a devotee. I am a devotee. And therefore, I should act on that platform, understanding that this person, whoever he may be, as a devotee, is a servant of Krishna, and I meant to serve the servants of Krishna. So I should be cautious to, I should not want people to become subordinate to me. Rather, I should try to develop the mentality of being servant to others, isn't it? That is the main mentality. Devotee means someone who develops the mentality of being a servant, a subordinate mentality. And knowing and understanding and keeping in mind one of the many important instructions given by Krishna in the Bhagavad-Gītā, that those who claim to be my devotees are not actually my devotees. Those who claim to be the devotees of my devotees, and those who serve my devotees as opposed to serving me directly, they are my real devotees, you see. So Krishna becomes very pleased when we respect show respect and engage in serving his devotees. So in this way, yes, we should be cautious. We should be alert and cautious, because even unknowingly we may commit offenses or aparat. When we deal with devotees, then the danger is that we may commit aparat, which is, can be quite serious and can impede our progress or advancement in spiritual life. So because some of you have to struggle back to your homes before tomorrow's so once again, thank you very much, and tomorrow there's Bhagavatam class here tomorrow morning, but it may be difficult for people to come.
Tomorrow holiday.
Anyways, anything to be said or any announcement to make? No, okay. Thank you very much. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Samasta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaura Bhimanandi.
Bhakti Raghava Swami Maharaj ki.
Jai.